Hello everyone, thank you for clicking on this video. Some state governments in India have announced that public exams will remain cancelled and that all Year 10 students are promoted without exams. College students still have an uncertain situation as they wait for their semester exams to be conducted after the commencement of the new academic session. Ever since the global pandemic problem got real, the working class and the students started getting anxious about their future. The overall economical mood and the projection of development and expansion in various fields are discussed almost every day. President Barack Obama shared a message of optimism and encouragement to the graduates of 2020.
Now, graduating is a big achievement under any circumstances. Some of you have had to overcome serious obstacles along the way, whether it was an illness, or a parent losing a job, or living in a neighborhood where people too often count you out. Along with the usual challenges of growing up, all of you have had to deal with the added pressures of social media, reports of school shootings, and the specter of climate change. And then, just as you're about to celebrate having made it through, just as you've been looking forward to proms and senior nights, graduation ceremonies, and let's face it, a whole bunch of parties, the world is turned upside down by a global pandemic. And as much as I'm sure you love your parents, I'll bet that being stuck at home with them and playing board games or watching Tiger King on TV is not exactly how you envisioned the last few months of your senior year. Now, I'll be honest with you. The disappointments of missing a live graduation, those will pass pretty quick. I don't remember much of my own high school graduation. I know that not having to sit there and listen to a commencement speaker isn't all that bad. Mine usually go on way too long. Also, not that many people look great in those caps, especially if you have big ears like me. And you'll have plenty of time to catch up with your friends once the immediate public health crisis is over. But what remains true is that your graduation marks your passage into adulthood, the time when you begin to take charge of your own life. It's when you get to decide what's important to you, the kind of career you want to pursue, who you want to build a family with, the values you want to live by. And given the current state of the world, that may be kind of scary. If you'd planned on going away for college, getting dropped off at campus in the fall, that's no longer a given. If you are planning to work while going to school, finding that first job is going to be tougher. Even families that are relatively well off are dealing with massive uncertainty. Those who were struggling before, they're hanging on by a thread. All of which means that you're going to have to grow up faster than some generations. This pandemic has shaken up the status quo and laid bare a lot of our country's deep-seated problems, from massive economic inequality to ongoing racial disparities to a lack of basic health care for people who need it. It's woken a lot of young people up to the fact that the old ways of doing things just don't work. That it doesn't matter how much money you make if everyone around you is hungry and sick, and that our society and our democracy only work when we think not just about ourselves, but about each other. It's also pulled the curtain back on another hard truth, something that we all have to eventually accept once our childhood comes to an end. You know, all those adults that you used to think were in charge and knew what they were doing? Turns out they don't have all the answers. A lot of them aren't even asking the right questions. So, if the world's going to get better, it's going to be up to you. That realization may be kind of intimidating, but I hope it's also inspiring. With all the challenges this country faces right now, nobody can tell you, no, you're too young to understand, or this is how it's always been done. Because with so much uncertainty, with everything suddenly up for grabs, this is your generation's world to shape. Since I'm one of the old guys, I won't tell you what to do with this power that rests in your hands, but I'll leave you with 3 quick pieces of advice. First, don't be afraid. America's gone through tough times before. Slavery, civil war, famine, disease, the Great Depression, and 9/11. And each time, we came out stronger. Usually because a new generation, young people like you, learned from past mistakes and figured out how to make things better. Second, do what you think is right. Doing what feels good, what's convenient, what's easy, that's how little kids think. Unfortunately, a lot of so-called grown-ups, including some with fancy titles and important jobs, still think that way, which is why things are so screwed up. I hope that instead you decide to ground yourself in values that last, like honesty, hard work, responsibility, fairness, generosity, respect for others. You won't get it right every time. You'll make mistakes, like we all do. But if you listen to the truth that's inside yourself, even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient, people will notice. They'll gravitate towards you, and you'll be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And finally, build a community. No one does big things by themselves. Right now, when people are scared, it's easy to be cynical and say, let me just look out for myself, or my family, or people who look or think or pray like me. But if we're going to get through these difficult times, if we're going to create a world where everybody has opportunity to find a job and afford college, if we're going to save the environment and defeat future pandemics, then we're going to have to do it together. So be alive to one another's struggles. Stand up for one another's rights. Leave behind all the old ways of thinking that divide us: sexism, racial prejudice, status, greed, and set the world on a different path. When you need help, Michelle and I have made it the mission of our foundation to give young people like you the skills and support to lead in your own communities and to connect you with other young leaders around the country and around the globe. But the truth is, you don't need us to tell you what to do, because in so many ways, you've already started to lead. Congratulations, class of 2020. Keep making us proud.
Even if he is talking to the American students, the points he made about perseverance and hope is applicable to all graduates all over the globe. Google and Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai delivered a message of hope to the graduates of 2020.
Hello everyone, and congratulations to the class of 2020, as well as your parents, your teachers, and everyone who helped you get to this day. I never imagined I'd be giving a commencement speech with no live audience from my backyard, but it's giving me a much deeper understanding for what our YouTube creators go through. And I certainly never thought I'd be sharing a virtual stage with a former president, a first lady, a Lady Gaga, and a Queen Bee, not to mention BTS. I don't think this is the graduation ceremony any of you imagine. At a time when you should be celebrating all the knowledge you've gained, you may be grieving what you've lost. The moves you planned, the jobs you earned, and the experiences you were looking forward to. In bleak moments like these, it can be difficult to find hope. So let me skip right to the end and tell you what happens. You will prevail. That's not really the end of the speech, so don't get too excited. The reason I know you'll prevail is because so many others have done it before you. 100 years ago, the class of 1920 graduated into the end of a deadly pandemic. 50 years ago, the class of 1970 graduated in the midst of Vietnam War. And nearly 20 years ago, the class of 2001 graduated just months before 9/11. There are notable examples like this. They had to overcome new challenges, and in all cases, they prevailed. The long arc of history tells us we have every reason to be hopeful. So, be hopeful. There is an interesting trend I've noticed. It's very conventional for every generation to underestimate the potential of the following one. It's because they don't realize that the progress of one generation becomes the foundational premise for the next. And it takes a new set of people to come along and realize all the possibilities. I grew up without much access to technology. We didn't get our first telephone till I was 10. I didn't have regular access to a computer until I came to America for graduate school. Under television, when we finally got one, only had one channel. So imagine how awestruck I am today to be speaking to you on a platform that has millions of channels. By contrast, you grew up with computers of all shapes and sizes. The ability to ask a computer anything, anywhere, the very thing I've spent my last decade working on, is not amazing to you. That's okay. It doesn't make me feel bad. It makes me hopeful. There are probably things about technology that frustrate you and make you impatient. Don't lose that impatience. It'll create the next technology revolution and enable you to build things my generation could never dream of. You may be just as frustrated by my generation's approach to climate change or education. Be impatient. It'll create the progress the world needs. You will make the world better in your own way, even if you don't know exactly how. The important thing is to be open-minded so that you can find what you love. For me, it was technology. The more access my family had to technology, the better our lives got. So when I graduated, I knew I wanted to do something to bring technology to as many others as possible. At the time, I thought I could achieve this by building better semiconductors. I mean, what could be more exciting than that? My father spent the equivalent of a year's salary on my plane ticket to the US so I could attend Stanford. It was my first time ever on a plane. But when I eventually landed in California, things weren't as I had imagined. America was expensive. A phone call back home was more than $2 a minute, and a backpack cost the same as my dad's monthly salary in India. And for all the talk about the warm California beaches, that water was freezing cold. On top of all that, I missed my family, my friends, and my girlfriend, now my wife, back in India. A bright spot for me during this time was computing. For the first time in my life, I could use a computer whenever I wanted to. Completely blew my mind. And at that same moment, the internet was literally being built all around me. The year I arrived at Stanford was the same year the browser Mosaic was released, which would popularize the World Wide Web and the internet. The summer I left was the same summer that a graduate student named Sergey Brin met a prospective engineering student named Larry Page. These two moments would profoundly shape the rest of my life. But at the time, I didn't know it. It took me a while to realize that the internet would be the single best way to make technology accessible to more people. And as soon as I did, I changed course and decided to pursue my dreams at Google. Inspired by the wonder that first browser created in me, I led the effort to launch one called Chrome in 2009 and drove the effort to help Google develop affordable laptops and phones so that a student growing up in any neighborhood or village in any part of the world could have the same access to information as all of you. Had I stayed the course in graduate school, I'd probably have a PhD today, which would have made my parents really proud, but I might have missed the opportunity to bring the benefits of technology to so many others. And I certainly wouldn't be standing here speaking to you as Google's CEO. Believe me when I say I saw none of this coming when I first touched down in the state of California 27 years ago. The only thing that got me from there to here, other than luck, was a deep passion for technology and an open mind. So take the time to find the thing that excites you more than anything else in the world. Not the thing your parents want you to do, or the thing that all your friends are doing, or that society expects of you. I know you're getting a lot of advice today, so let me leave you with mine. Be open, be impatient, be hopeful. If you can do that, history will remember the class of 2020, not for what you lost, but for what you changed. you have the chance to change everything. I'm optimistic you will. Thank you.
Sundar in 2017 also talked about India's interest and desire to excel in education.
One of the great things about India is this tremendous interest in education. People talk about it all the time. Most parents aspire for this for their children. And so I think it's a great foundation we have as a country. In my experience growing up here, I think there's a lot of emphasis on spending time on the books and learning things academically. I think there's a lot of pressure to follow set lanes throughout your career. You're in high school, you're thinking about college. A lot of times when I was younger, people would say, this person didn't get into this college or something, and that's the end of the road. I mean, life is so different from that. I get surprised people start preparing for IIT in their 8th grades. That's a bit shocking to me. I get very surprised people come to IITs and immediately they are thinking about IIMs and so on. The US, for example, most students don't choose their majors till their final year. So people explore different things and find what they're really passionate about. The way I dealt with these things was try and feel what I really enjoy doing and pursue that. I would do what feels something like you like spending time on. I would use that as a yardstick and not feel the pressure to do what others are telling you to do. I've always wanted to work on computing, build computing products. The thing which still keeps me going is the desire to build products which will be used by billions of users and makes a difference for them. And that's what I've been focused on. It doesn't need to be even in engineering. There are many, many different ways, and you will see this later in life. People do well from all walks of life. I think education needs to evolve and change just like with everything else. Getting into an elite institution doesn't guarantee success. It matters a lot, but it doesn't guarantee success. I would like to see people value creativity, value experience of doing things, taking risks. It is important to be well-rounded. I would encourage people to try different things, take some risks, follow their passions a little bit more, enjoy what you're doing. And what matters most is loving what you're doing and trying to do well at it. So I think if you follow your heart and do what you like, you will always do much better. It's worthwhile taking risks and trying to do something you're really excited by. And if the first attempt you don't do it, you can try again, and things tend to work out in the long run. If you work on really difficult things, you're better off because you have no competition. Others aren't working on that difficult a problem. Even if you fail, you end up doing something great in the process. You want to aim high enough that you fail a few times. I think that's the natural part of the process. Setbacks actually don't matter. In Silicon Valley, part of the reason so many people start up a company is starting up a company and even having failed, you can wear it like a badge of honor. And I think that's important. Culturally, risk is rewarded. So I think it's important to keep your hopes, keep your dreams, and try to follow them. Most of how life plays out is up to you, not up to what happens outside of you. And I think it's important to keep that in mind and take the long-term view. Some point in your life, you have to work with people where you feel a bit insecure, because that means you're working with people who are better than you and who are pushing you. If you actually feel very secure in what you do, it means you're doing something comfortable and you're not pushing yourself. There are many, many times I've felt working with people in a group, am I doing enough? These people seem much better than me, and I think it's an inherent part of learning. And as a leader, I think it's really important to build organizations where people actually want to work together and trusting them to doing the right thing. And as a leader, it's less about trying to be successful and more about to make those people successful. I'm absolutely, with full certainty convinced that India will be a global player in the digital economy, and it'll be competitive with any country in the world.
He is confident that India will compete with bigger players in digital economy and can be successful. A pandemic cannot end dreams and aspirations. We don't want to see heartbroken students taking their own lives anymore. We must encourage our cousins, nieces and nephews who are graduating this year that there are plenty of opportunities about. I will see you all soon in another video. Thank you for watching.